What's up, family? Thank you for joining me in today's video. We'll learn how to make this beautiful shirt dress. So I already have a video on how to make a shirt collar where we have the collar stand and collar fall. So I won't go in detail in making the collar in this video, but the link to that video will be in the description. But I will make every other part of this dress in today's video. So if you're joining me for the first time today, welcome and thank you so much for joining me in the video. Kindly subscribe to my channel and turn on the notification bell. I upload sewing tutorials and DIY videos on this channel. And to my returning subscribers, thank you so much for joining me again in another interesting video. So on the table, we're going to use this pattern paper and these basic tools to draft the pattern. Without further ado, let's begin. So the first thing I want to do is to measure 3 inches. This will be my center front and this will be where I want my shoulder to be. I just measured 1 inch downwards before I start drafting my pattern. So from that point, I've just measured my 3 inch and dotted that. I'll just mark a straight line from top to bottom. Now, just bear in mind that each of these 3 inches will be further splitted into 3. So I'm just using the lines on my cutting mat to guide me. Okay, so I already have the 1 inch lines on the cutting mat. So I'm just going to further mark some lines between these 3 lines. Okay, so the 3 inch lines, I'm just breaking them into 1 inch lines. I hope this makes sense. So we have 1 inch, 1 inch and 1 inch, which is a total of 3 inches. So I'm just breaking that because that will be the fold for our button overlap. So that's the point where our buttons will overlap on each other in the center front of the shirt. I hope this makes sense. So from that point, I just want to go ahead and measure my shoulder. So the shoulder for today's project is 17 inches. So if you divide 17 by 2, that will be 8.5. I just want to go ahead and add my ½ inch seam allowance on the shoulder to join the shoulder width. So on that point, I'll just go ahead and slant my shoulder. There's already a detailed video on how to draft a bodice pattern. You can refer to that and come back to this video. I'm not going to bore you with so much details, so I'll just go ahead from that point and measure my armhole depth. Okay, then we'll mark a straight line to connect the shoulder line and the armhole depth. Okay, next up I'm going to measure my bust point, which is from my shoulder to the bust point, and I'm using 11.5. Then we'll just mark a straight line to indicate our bust point. Okay, so the half length of this blouse is 17 inches. So we're going to just measure that 17. Then we'll go ahead and add ½ inch for our seam allowance. Okay, so mark that point there. Next up, we'll create our armhole. So I'll just bear in mind that this pattern we're drafting, we're going to use this same pattern for front and the back of the dress. Okay, so we're not making the back pattern different from this, so we'll just mark everything on this pattern. Then while cutting for the front and back, we'll do a few modifications. So I'm measuring the neckline, and for the neckline I've measured 3.25, so 3¼ inch. Then for the depth, I'm just going with 3.5. When we made the previous shirt dress, we had to measure to to be sure we had a neck circumference of 16 inches. But for today's project, we are working with a neck circumference of 18 inches. Okay, so you just modify this neckline to suit the size you're working with. Just note that once you've marked this, you can as well just run your tape along the neckline to be sure that what you have will be up to half of your neck circumference that you're working with. Okay, so once you've done that, you should be able to adjust appropriately to suit the neckline you're working with, or better still, just use your tape to go like that. So start from there, measure. I have 3.5, then place it on that 3.5 there, then you use that to determine the neck depth of your front neckline. Because we're working with a neck circumference of 18 inches, we want to make sure we have up to 9 inches, because this represents one side of our neckline, both front and back. Create our dart. So I want to use a princess dart for the front piece. Then for the back, we're going to just use a normal dart. So what we need to do here is just to modify this pattern, because you know we're using the same pattern for front and back. Okay, so our bust span is 10 inches. We'll just measure 5, which is half of the bust span. We'll mark that there. Then we'll connect with a straight line. We already have a detailed tutorial on how to draft a bodice pattern. This is just a quick run through. Measure your dart legs, 1/2 inch on both sides. So this will serve for our back bodice. Then for the front bodice, we need to measure our armhole. So when you measure the armhole, you divide that by 2, get the midpoint, mark on the midpoint. Then from that midpoint, you're going to connect to the bust line to create the front dart. I already have another video on how to draft a princess dart. You can refer to that after watching this video for a detailed explanation on how to draft your princess dart. Okay, I'm just marking my 1/2 inch on both sides. I'm extending the bottom as well by 1/2 inch, okay, because we want it to curve out. Then we're going to replace this 1 inch on the armhole. So I'm attaching a total of about 3 videos, I think. The shirt collar video, the princess dart video, the bodice pattern video, and the shirt dress video. If you can watch those videos, they will really inform you on every step I took in creating this pattern. So remember that this is our center front line, and these are just for the button overlap. Okay, these 3 lines. So we're paying attention to this center front line to cut out our back bodice. So next we're going to input our bust measurement. So our bust circumference is 45 inches. If we divide 45 by 4, that's going to be 11.25. okay, so we'll mark that there. Then once we've marked our bust line, we're going to go ahead to add our ease allowance. So for ease, I'm adding 1/2 inch for ease. Then I'll go ahead and add 1.5 for my seam allowance. Modify to suit your preference. If you prefer a seam allowance of 1 inch, do well to add that. So our waist circumference is 42 inches, and if we divide 42 by 4, that's 10.5. We're going to mark that there. So because we took away some inches for our dart, which is a total of 1.5 inches, we're going to replace that on the waistline as well. So that's a total of 1.5 inches on the waistline. Then we'll also add our ½ inch for ease on the waistline. Okay, I hope each of this step makes sense. If you don't understand any part, you can always pause, rewind, and catch the details before you continue watching. It's that easy. Okay, pause the video, go back to where you skipped, and continue from there. So this is what we have for our front and back bodies. Okay, so let me just make this clear here that this is the line we'll be working with when we're cutting our front pattern, our back pattern. Okay, so we forgot to add our seam allowance to the waistline, so we're just going ahead to add our 1 inch for our seam allowance there. Then we're going to just draw a line to connect that to the bust line. Okay, so that's what we have here. So we're just going to use this pattern. We'll cut out the whole pattern, then we'll fold off the front part of the pattern to create, to cut the back. Then when cutting the front, we'll now replace what we folded out and use it to cut the front. This is just the easiest it can be. Okay, so remember that that extension here is for the front piece. So fold this away. And we'll fold this away as well. So this will not fold until you've done that. I'm just doing those notches so that it will be easy to fold off the armhole before we cut the back. So the bodice is ready. We'll set this aside. Then next we're going to draft the sleeve pattern. So for the sleeve, we're just going to do a 180 degrees flare. We're not doing a 360, so 180 is just fine for the sleeve. So we're going to fold our fabric into our pattern paper into two, and we're going to derive the radius we want to work with. Okay, so normally for cold shoulder flare, 5 inches is fine. If you want it to drop, you can consider doing it more than 5 inches so that it makes it wider. Okay, but if you do 5, ½ inch will go on the seam allowance, and 4.5 is just fine for every adult. If the person is a bit bigger, you can add ½ inch to that. But if it's for a smaller person, you can consider taking off ½ inch. So an average of 4.5 goes for most adults. So this will be a radius of 3 inches. Okay, mark that there and mark it all around the pattern. Then you're going to connect the dots. So just confirm that you have your 5 inches. Then we're going to determine the length of our sleeves. So we want a length of 8 inches. Okay, so just make our dots around that. As you can see on the dress, the flare has 2 steps. So we're cutting 2 different lengths of flare. But we're going to use this same pattern for both flare. So what we'll just do is to mark the longest one, which is 8 inches, mark it all around you can go ahead and add 1 inch for your hemming allowance before you cut, or you just leave it like that. When cutting on fabric, you just add 1 inch to the fabric. So once you've marked your 8 inch all round, you connect your dots. The next flare, which will be the shorter one, will be 5 inches. So our dress pattern is now ready, and this is all we have. Next, we're going to cut on fabric and we're going to be sewing the dress, but that will be in my next video. Join me again in that video. Kindly give this video a thumbs up, share with your friends, subscribe to my channel and turn on the notification bell so that once that video is up, you'll get notified. I hope to see you in that video. Thank you so much for watching today's video. Bye.